He's dead.
Let's talk about Resident Evil 9. Resident Evil is probably one of my favorite franchises of all time. I grew up with it, and every mainline entry gets me excited. And 9, folks, I mean, the return of Leon, right? So the stakes are pretty high, and after having played about 14 hours on the PlayStation 5 Pro, beating the game with pretty thorough exploration, I have some takes on this highly anticipated title. The review code was provided by Capcom for review purposes, and this is a spoiler-free review. And let me just start by saying that, yes, folks, this is a good game. Capcom absolutely cooked here. Best way I can describe this title is that it's basically 2 Resident Evil games in one. There is the gray side, which is more like Resident Evil 7, classic survival horror. And then there's the Leon side, which is more like Resident Evil 4, maybe even Resident Evil 8, more action horror. And this game does a great job in making those 2 gameplay styles come together in a cohesive fashion. The game starts with Grace, and this is basically like your rookie character. She's a nervous wreck, very anxious, inexperienced, at times helpless, has limited weapons, limited and precious resources that must be conserved, limited item slots. And when playing as her, one has to think about what to bring and what to put in storage, what items to craft under what circumstances, because there are only so many things you can craft. You have to be careful about combat approach and about what routes to take and what routes to avoid. You have to watch out for big zombies that lurk around levels that you have to run away from or avoid. You have to take advantage of stealth. It's just a lot more methodical in terms of gameplay style, and you get these really genuinely tense and scary moments due to that sense of like helplessness. And then when you play as Leon, it's what I like to call revenge mode. You get to traverse the areas you felt powerless in and just kick some ass against these zombies that, playing as Grace, gave you a hard time. So with Leon, you've got a character who is very much the veteran. He's worn, he's seen it all, fazed by nothing, badass, and smartass. Yes, folks, the Leon quips return in full force.
I think I want a second opinion.
And as Leon, you have access to a ton of weapon options. You've got abundance of ammo. Combat is very Resident Evil 4 style, so you shoot limbs, execute melee attacks when prompted. You've got Resident Evil 4 style Tetris inventory, and you've got the addition of this powerful new axe that serves as a melee weapon with which you can do light and heavy attacks. You can do parries. You've got awesome finisher moves. You can also pick up melee weapons dropped by zombie enemies, and the game will automatically throw them at a nearby target, which deals a lot of damage and stuns enemies, providing more combat options and strategic opportunities when you're engaged with large groups of enemies. You really feel like a true badass, like someone who has been through this time and time again. But at the same time, the game is still challenging. While Leon does feel powerful, you still have to focus and be really intentional with how you tackle combat, because you can also die easily if you're careless. And also like that they actually made Leon feel old, like there is a badassery to him, but at the same time there's like a heft to his movement. He breathes heavy. You can tell that age is catching up to him a little bit, which is a nice little touch. And so yeah, the game structure is basically you go back and forth between Grace and Leon, and it's this story that is told in parallel. Unlike, say, Resident Evil 2, where you first play side A and then side B, this is just one storyline where you switch back and forth between these 2 protagonists. And starting out, you definitely play more as Grace with sprinkles of Leon, but then later on, it's a lot more Leon leading with sprinkles of Grace. And Leon also eventually gets his own levels that better leverage and are designed to be more based around his specific, more combat-heavy gameplay style, and those levels are meant to challenge you as the badass that Leon is. And so yeah, the balance of gameplay between these 2, the way they made it narratively work, switching back and forth between these 2, it's a gameplay balance that they struck really well given how differently these 2 characters play. And there's a sense of freshness that comes with going from feeling more helpless to feeling more badass, then going back to feeling helpless again. You're constantly switching from fear mode to revenge mode, and it's something that didn't feel jarring and actually kept the game feeling fresh. They still play similarly enough in terms of gameplay controls and mechanics that it doesn't feel like such a drastic departure when you switch from one character to another, but they still play differently enough where you understand the different approaches that you can take with each character. The game does does all of that really well. And the moment-to-moment gameplay feels really good for both. It's both responsive and impactful combat and gunplay. The movement feels really smooth, but with just the right amount of heft that kind of really fits this horror genre. It kind of keeps the characters a little more grounded. The controls overall feel intuitive. Everything just kind of felt really frictionless. And then there is the fact that you can choose between first-person and third-person camera from the outset. And whether you're playing as Grace or as Leon, you can do first-person or third-person. By default, the game does recommend that as Grace, you play in first-person, and as Leon, you play in third-person. So that's just what I ended up doing, but I'm excited about the prospect of replaying the game with Grace in third-person and Leon in first-person, because these two different camera perspectives do make for pretty different gameplay experiences. The fact that the option is there from the outset is just really neat. And the thing that really carries this game is just how fun the level design is. The way the game is structured is that it's basically multiple open world sandboxes that feature MacGuffins that you have to collect in order to proceed. Throughout the marketing of this game, you've already seen one of the open sandbox settings, the classic Resident Evil mansion-like Rhodes Hill Care Center. And there are more of these sandboxes that you'll tackle as you proceed through the game, but I won't spoil those. But yeah, basically every area is just collect these things and then gather them so that you can proceed to the next sandbox with the MacGuffins you have to collect. But what makes this design fun is how the journey to getting those MacGuffins and the gameplay scenarios in between were really well designed, and there are a lot of fun things that happen in between, and of course a lot of scary things that happen in between. The levels are all just really smartly designed, the way it all loops around, the way you collect key items that unlock new doors, new puzzles, new areas, and you start to see how the subsections of these sandboxes all kind of connect and loop around, and how it all comes together so cohesively and so smartly. As you explore, you find text logs that hint towards hidden items or offer, like safe combinations, and the game constantly encourages exploration and looking around carefully for optional but useful item pickups, permanent upgrades, valuable resources such as ammo, healing, crafting materials, collectibles, and more. And the crafting mechanics of this game I really enjoy. With Grace, you collect blood and you combine them with scraps in order to make ammo, healing items, and other useful tools like this injector that allows you to stealth attack zombies and freaking kill them in one blow and have them explode. But resources for Grace are really scarce, so you want to pick and choose what to craft at what moments. And then with Leon, you collect gunpowder and then use scraps in order to craft things like ammo and grenades and you name it, all the things that Leon would use. And it's this game and level design that generally just offers a great sense of progression. And along the way, of course, you've got obstacles in the form of challenging enemies and enemy placements, the zombies, the creatures. As Grace, you really have to approach enemy zombies with a lot of thought, patience, and consideration if you want to overcome them or navigate around them. There's not enough ammunition as Grace to kill all of the zombies. You actually really have to pick your battles, and it's actually better to avoid combat as much as possible and to run if you need to. Some combat is unavoidable, and the fact that zombies stay permanently down once you take them down does help you navigate levels if you manage to take them down. But if you end up wasting all of your resources in this one area and then end up in another area where there's more zombies and you don't have any ammunition or any of the resources that will help you overcome the area's enemy placement, then you kind of might screw yourself. So you have to be really considerate with your resource usage, and I really liked that gameplay aspect. And then as Leon, of course, it's all about combat mastery, and you're actually rewarded for combat aggression. Enemies will drop ammunition, and killing enemies will give you rewards that will allow you to get more weapons and upgrades and whatnot down the line. But beyond the placement of the zombies, what I really like about what this game does is the zombies' behaviors. Because of the wide variety of zombie types, what's unique about these zombies is that they actually retain pieces of who they were before they turned, so they have unique behavior. So for example, you've got zombies who have to follow rules like keeping the lights off at night. So if you turn on a light, that zombie will feel compelled to go to that light switch and turn it off, and you can actually exploit that to either distract him or to move around him. You've got made zombies that are compelled to clean, including corpses of zombies that you kill, so that impacts their behavior, and that's something you can either exploit or something that might screw you over down the line. You've got singing zombies who are delirious. She's always surrounded by a crowd. She attacks you with a screech that will stun you and cripple you in combat. You've got zombies that are sensitive to sound and they need quiet, and noise is what agitates them more than anything. And then there's this added mechanic of zombies who you kill, their corpses remain and can eventually, as time passes, transform into what's called blister heads, who are just stronger and more aggressive versions of those zombies. So yeah, killing a zombie doesn't necessarily guarantee that they're gone forever. And the game really keeps you guessing on whether a corpse that you pass by again will eventually rise up and become a blister head and make an area that was once upon a time clear and safe no longer clear and safe. Those grates you can make what are called hemolytic injectors, and those can be used both to do stealth attacks that will instantly explode zombies and kill them outright, or you can use them to blow up corpses that are already on the ground. But again, you don't have enough resources to blow all of them up, so you have to be strategic and pick and choose which zombies to blow up using these injectors that are very limited in quantity. So gameplay suddenly becomes really strategic in relation to the smart level design of this game and its various areas. And there's always this constant tension of resource management and, what resources you want to use, and a constant sense of having to make choices where you consider risk versus reward. And of course, in between all of that, you will have your fun set pieces and boss battles, trademarks of Resident Evil, which I don't want to spoil too much. And all of this comes in a package that is just really beautiful to look at. RE Engine is once again doing work for Capcom. It looks better than ever. The lighting especially is really amazing. Just the overall graphics and then the performance being as smooth as it is on PlayStation 5 Pro just made for a genuine visual feast. I did notice some weird shimmering effects on reflective materials that felt like a graphical bug. And then there were one or two little moments where I saw a noticeable frame rate dip, but it was nothing that I felt was intrusive. I'd say 99% of the experience was just a gorgeous looking game that performed really well, and all with a good amount of diversity in environment types, and the atmosphere of these different environments combined with just how good the blood and the gore looks in this title makes for a really visually atmospheric horror experience. And that atmosphere is further enhanced by just how amazing the audio design of Resident Evil 9 is. Audio design is something that I think Resident Evil has absolutely nailed with their recent modern entries. It's really nuanced and subtle when it needs to be, and then really bombastic when it needs to be. I think audio can often make or break horror, and Resident Evil 9, in conjunction with its awesome visuals, the audio of this game absolutely makes its horror aspect. And when you add all of that with the phenomenal performances on the part of all of the actors involved, heroes and villains and side characters alike, and you get a Resident Evil game whose presentation is quite well executed. And it's also just a really technically sound product. I encountered no real major bugs or glitches from start to finish in my experience. And then there are all of the replayability features that this game implements. You've got New Game Plus, you've got difficulty modes, challenges to do on replays. You've got items, cosmetics, and cheat codes that you can unlock by attaining in-game currency through the completion of things like challenges and through the completion of the game. So even after you beat the game once, there's plenty of mastery to be had, plenty of things to unlock that will kind of encourage you to keep coming back to it. Now, one element that I don't want to talk much about is the story, because obviously I don't want to spoil anything. What I will say is that whereas Resident Evil 7 and 8 was like a fresh narrative start for the series, for the future, Resident Evil 9 does look back at the past quite a bit. The title itself being Requiem, meaning an act or token of remembrance, that should come as no surprise. It deals with characters overcoming past trauma and regrets, and past events in the series certainly do have a lot of relevance in this particular entry. There are definitely moments throughout the story where you get more of like a personal look at these characters, but At the end of the day, it is a Resident Evil story, so with the serious moments also comes bombastic and ridiculous stuff. You know, the plot and world building take precedence over characters, and it's what you'd expect out of a Resident Evil game. I think fans will like all the new history that is added to the lore, and Grace, I think, does make for a great new protagonist, a great counterbalance to Leon, and the fact that Leon is back is already worthy of hype. Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 2 Remake are my favorite games in the series, and Leon is my favorite character in Resident Evil, and I personally do think they did this character justice, and it's really cool to see him in his more veteran and later years, both in a state where, you know, he's seen it all, and also where his age is starting to show a little bit, but still, like, the badass that we know and love, the character who's grown from the rookie he was in Resident Evil 2 to the badass he became in Resident Evil 4 to the kind of seen-it-all, worn soldier that we see in Resident Evil 9. Seeing that character's development throughout all of these games, I think that's one of the best parts of this title. And for fans of Leon and his arc, there's definitely a lot of fan service here that I personally enjoyed. I do think that the villains in this game are a little underdeveloped, especially one of the two main baddies. I just thought he kind of came and went. I thought Resident Evil 8 definitely had far more memorable villains. But that aside, there will be plenty of moments throughout Resident Evil 9 that I think fans will find memorable overall. So with all said and done, Resident Evil 9, absolutely a worthy mainline entry in the Resident Evil series. It's really fun, it's scary, it's a great blend of what people love about classic Resident Evil and modern Resident Evil. The two characters with the two gameplay styles with the parallel storylines all come together really cohesively. There's a lot of great nostalgia that Resident Evil 9 takes advantage of. The level design, the zombies, the gameplay, the gunplay, the combat, the resource management, the strategic nature of the way enemies are placed in relation to the level design, the beauty of the game, how atmospheric everything is, the audio, the polish, the love and care put into this title, all made for a package that I think ultimately will deliver for Resident Evil fans. And so yeah, Resident Evil 9 gets my full recommendation. The one thing that might turn some people off is the fact that it is about 14 to 15 hours, even if you explore thoroughly. But again, there's a lot of replayability elements that I think makes the package worthwhile. But if you're someone who's just like complete the campaign once and are done kind of a player, maybe you'll want to wait for a sale if 15 hours doesn't feel substantial enough to you. But I do think that what 15 hours there are here are really well crafted 15 hours. So for me personally, it's worth its asking price as someone who has been waiting for a new mainline Resident Evil game, been really excited about it, and been really thrilled about the prospect of Leon's return and seeing what he's been up to, especially in his later years. And that, folks, is my take on Resident Evil 9. Once you get your hands on it, I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on the game in the comments below. Thanks for tuning in, and to be further updated on more gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.